I woke up that morning with no idea that by the end of the day my entire childhood would feel like a story someone else had lived. But the moment I heard my phone buzzing nonstop on the nightstand, something in my chest tightened, an old familiar dread, the kind that crawls up your spine even before your brain knows why. I didn't reach for the phone. Not yet. I just stared at it vibrating in the half-light of dawn, glowing like a warning flare. 5 calls, then 7, then 10, all from home, all from the same 2 people who only called when they needed something. I knew without opening it that a storm was coming, and I also knew, God help me, that I wasn't sure I cared anymore, because the last time I saved them, I lost a piece of myself I never got back. I should probably start with the moment everything snapped, but the truth is nothing ever snaps all at once. It wears down. It erodes. It breaks little by little, until the final crack is just the last straw resting on a mountain you've been carrying your whole life. That mountain was my family. That mountain was the Lane family legacy. Harper fixes everything. Harper pays every bill. Harper is the one who has her life together, so Harper owes us. And for 33 years I believed them. Until the night they pushed too far. Until the moment I finally said the words I didn't know I had in me: call your precious daughter. I guess this is how my story starts, not with a tragedy, not with a betrayal, but with a phone buzzing in an apartment I pay for on my own, in a life I built from ashes nobody else bothered to sweep. My name is Harper Lane, and this is the moment I stopped being the family bank and started being a human being again. The night everything began. Portland was wrapped in the kind of rain that softens every sound, like the world is giving itself permission to rest. I'd just gotten home from a 12-hour day juggling structural assessments for a high-rise renovation downtown. I ate leftover curry, showered, stretched my aching neck, and crawled into bed with a book I didn't even finish a page of. My body felt heavier than it should for a woman in her early 30s, but that's what happens when you carry people far longer than they ever deserved. I set my phone on Do Not Disturb. Habit. Survival. Freedom. Outside, the wind rattled the balcony railing. Inside, the only sound was my breath, slow and steady. For once, nothing and no one wanted anything from me. But peace in my life has always had an expiration date, and it's never longer than a few hours. I was just slipping into sleep when my mind wandered toward the videos I'd seen earlier, my siblings Brody and Cassidy posting their Sedona and Flagstaff getaway like they were cast in some billionaire fantasy. Private villas, designer boutiques, jeep tours through Red Rock canyons, poolside champagne, a poker room that no 26-year-old unemployed man should ever be inside. The comments on their posts were full of awe and envy. Living the good life, influencer goals. Your family must be loaded. That word stayed with me. Because we weren't loaded. We had never been loaded. Everything we had came from my parents' fixed retirement income, and every financial miracle they'd ever boasted about came from me. From my promotions, my savings, my overtime checks, my sacrifices. But the Sedona trip, the private poker room, the sudden influx of designer shopping bags. No, something was off, even for them. I remembered staring at one of Cassidy's videos, her trying on a glittering silver dress in a boutique that required appointments and credit checks, when I saw just for a second a reflection in the counter mirror. A receipt, a blurry line item, and a name. Lane. It snapped something small and quiet inside me, something I didn't acknowledge at the time. A warning I pushed away. I should have listened. Around midnight, I drifted into a shallow sleep, the kind where your muscles relax but your mind keeps pacing. I dreamed of red rocks and flashing casino lights, and my mother's voice calling my name from far away. When the phone finally rang at 3 a.m, it didn't feel like waking. It felt like drowning. The vibration rattled the nightstand, then again, over and over, like someone pounding on the door of my life. I groaned, reached blindly, and blinked at the caller ID. Mom. My stomach knotted. Calls from Mom were never good at this hour. Calls from Mom at any hour usually meant money. Calls at 3 a.m. meant catastrophe, or what she defined as catastrophe. I let it ring. It rang again immediately, then Dad, then both of them at once. Something icy slid down my spine. I answered on the 9th ring. The moment the call connected, all I heard was screaming. "Harper," my mother shrieked. "Oh God, Harper, thank goodness your brother is in the hospital. He's in agony. They won't treat him until we pay." Dad grabbed the phone. "Harper, listen to me. You need to send $17,000 immediately. Do you hear me? Right now." Before he goes into shock, my whole body went still. 17,000. Why, I said carefully. What happened? He collapsed. Mom sobbed. Security attacked him. They broke his ribs. They won't give him the strong meds until someone pays the deposit. $17,000, Dad repeated. Now. Harper, for God's sake, hurry. My breath came slow and even. Too even. Because something about the way they were talking wasn't adding up. Which hospital, I asked. More shouting in the background. A man's voice. Something about paperwork. Something about signatures. Paperwork. At 3 a.m, I pressed my fingers to my forehead. "Mom," I said. "Tell me exactly what happened." "We don't have time for questions," she wailed. "Your brother is suffering. Brody could die." The guilt hit me like it always does, sharp, conditioned, automatic. The instinct to act, to fix, to save. I sat up in bed, heart pounding. For the first time, I didn't move. My mind flashed back to the videos, the receipts, the credit lines, the designer shopping, the poker chips, Brody kissing black chips like he had any right to touch them, Cassidy drinking champagne like she was royalty, and the reflection in that boutique counter. Lane. "Why can't you pay?" I asked quietly. Silence. Then Mom's voice breaking. "We gave him everything we had," she whispered. "We thought he just needed a little fun, a reset. He promised he wouldn't go too far." "Harper, please, we can't lose him," Dad cut in sharply. "Harper, stop stalling. You know you're the only one who can fix this. You always fix things. You're the reliable one." There it was. The line I'd heard my entire life. The leash they always tugged when they needed me to sacrifice myself for them. Reliable, responsible, the good one. The daughter who didn't get to have limits. Something inside me hardened. I looked out the window at the rain streaking the glass. The city lights blurred into soft halos. It was beautiful, peaceful, and for a moment I felt a clarity I hadn't tasted in years. "Harper," Mom screamed. "Why aren't you answering? Why aren't you saying yes?" I swallowed once, breathing in the damp air of my apartment bought with my effort, my overtime, my life no one else cared about except when they needed something from it. "Call your precious daughter," I said quietly. "What?" Dad barked. "Call Cassidy," I repeated. "She seems to be doing just fine." Mom gasped. Dad cursed. Voices overlapped. Someone in the background yelled, "Just get the money from her, she'll pay." But I didn't hear the rest. I pressed the red button. The call ended. The silence afterward wasn't silence at all. It was liberation, a tiny one but real. I stared down at the screen as it lit up again. And again. 30 seconds later, the voicemail started coming. More screaming, more begging, more guilt. I didn't listen, not 1 second. Instead, I reached over, pulled the charger from the wall, held down the power button, and turned the phone off completely. I lay back on the pillow, heart hammering, but mind strangely calm. I had just done the unthinkable. I had just said no. Tears prickled behind my eyes, not from fear, not from guilt, but from something I barely recognized. Relief. Pure, cold, astonishing relief. Maybe the storm wasn't coming after all. Maybe it had already passed, and all that was left was the world I hadn't let myself imagine yet. Maybe this was the first night of my real life. I exhaled slowly, closed my eyes, and for the first time in years I slept without dreaming of anyone else's needs but my own. I didn't turn my phone back on until late the next morning. Sunlight spilled across my hardwood floors, warm and unbothered, as if the world outside had absolutely no idea my family had been screaming into the void for hours. I stretched, rolled my shoulders, made coffee, watered the tiny cactus in the window, and breathed. Really breathed. My apartment felt different, lighter, quieter, like it finally belonged to me instead of being a satellite office for emergencies coming out of Phoenix. When I finally powered the phone on, it exploded, buzzing, vibrating, chiming so violently it skittered across the counter. 41 missed calls, dozens of texts, 15 voicemails, and buried among them a single notification from the Arizona State Police Department. That one I didn't open. Not yet. I wasn't ready to let the chaos back in. Instead, I opened social media. And that's when the real gut punch landed. The moment the app loaded, I found myself staring straight into the glossy, over-filtered world my siblings had crafted, one they flaunted like a crown they'd never earned. The trip had started 48 hours ago. Their feeds looked like a documentary about lottery winners going feral. The first video autoplayed before I even realized what I was looking at. Cassidy sat in the passenger seat of a lifted Jeep Wrangler, her sunglasses so oversized they swallowed half her face, her hair blowing in the Red Rock wind. She flipped the camera to show Brody at the wheel, revving the engine like he'd been handed control of the universe. "Sedona vibes," she squealed. "With my two favorite boys." The camera panned to Jax Monroe sprawled in the back seat, shirt unbuttoned, bracelets clinking against the roll cage, as he saluted the view like a man who thought the sun rose exclusively for him. I exhaled slowly. Of course it was Jax. That man had been trouble since the moment he drifted into our lives, slick, smooth-talking, wealthy adjacent, but never quite fully accountable for anything. A professional freeloader dressed as a trust fund prince. The Jeep video ended, and my screen immediately cued the next clip. A slow-motion montage of sparkling wine spilling into crystal flutes. A tray of oysters. A medium-rare steak drizzled with truffle butter. 3 laughing faces bathing in gold light like some kind of influencer cult. Then came the boutique clips. I recognized the storefront on Sightbloom, a designer boutique in Flagstaff. A place where the cheapest item started at $700. Cassidy strutted in front of the mirror wearing a silver dress so reflective she looked dipped in mercury. She twirled, she posed, she blew kisses at her own reflection. And behind her in the reflection of the far left mirror I saw something that made my stomach tighten. A receipt. A blurred signature on the touchscreen. A name. The letters weren't clear, but the shape of them was unmistakable. Lane. I blinked hard. No, it could have been anyone. It was a common enough last name, except it wasn't. Not to me. I closed the video quickly, my pulse skipping. But the feed kept pulling me forward. Another clip loaded Brody throwing his arms around both Cassidy and Jax, screaming, "We own this town tonight," as they entered a private poker room in a lodge whose membership rules practically required a blood oath. The table was custom felt. The chips were black and purple, the kind casinos didn't hand out unless you arrived with deep pockets, or a delusion large enough to mimic them. Brody didn't have deep pockets. Brody didn't have any pockets. He barely had rent money 6 months out of every year. He placed a stack of chips onto the table with the flourish of a man trying to impress an audience he didn't realize was imaginary. The dealer smiled politely the way professionals do when they know someone at their table is about to ruin their life. Cassidy's caption under the video, "When your brother is on a lucky streak." Lucky streak. Right, the kind of lucky streak that ends in screaming phone calls at 3 a.m. I kept scrolling. Private sauna. Yacht deck on a lake I'm sure none of them could name on a map. More champagne, more outfits, more illusions. And for the first time since the storm started, I wasn't angry. I was embarrassed. Embarrassed that I'd spent my whole life paying for these people to pretend they were something they weren't. Embarrassed that this fantasy, this facade, was built on the quiet assumption that Harper will cover it. My finger hovered over the screen as I looked at their smiles. Joyful, carefree, oblivious to consequences because consequences were always redirected to me. Then I opened my group chat with my parents. 3 messages from Mom. "Your brother is suffering. Why aren't you answering Harper? Please don't do this to us." 2 from Dad. "Be responsible. Fix this. I felt something in my ribcage fold in on itself. A familiar ache, but duller this time. Smaller, contained. I scrolled again, and that's when another video hit me harder than the rest. A poker room selfie. Brody was holding a handful of black chips in front of the camera, grinning so wide he looked unhinged. But it wasn't the chips that caught my attention. It wasn't the grin, it was the card lying on the table in the corner of the frame. A membership card. Premium tier. Issued to someone with verified high income and stable credit. The name was blurry, but the color pattern was identical to mine, the teal and gold design I'd always thought was pretty but unnecessary. I leaned closer to the screen. The beginning of the name looked like an H. I set the phone down slowly, my breath thinning. My mind fought the conclusion forming too quickly. No, they wouldn't. Brody wouldn't dare. Even he wasn't that reckless. Except he was. Except history said he absolutely was. And I had ignored that history because admitting it would mean confronting what I'd always feared, that my family didn't just use me, they depended on me in a way that was parasitic. I made myself watch the next clip, even though my hands shook. Cassidy was sitting beside the hotel bed, hair wrapped in a towel robe tied loosely around her waist, showing off a newly purchased diamond bracelet. "Little gifts from big wins," she said with a wink. Behind her on the bedside table was a printed receipt for a high-limit transaction. The camera didn't linger on it, but I caught enough. Authorization approved, name H. Lane. I closed my eyes. My pulse roared in my ears, and for a moment the room tilted. There it was, undeniable, irrefutable, my name, on their mess. My phone buzzed again. A text from a coworker. "Hey Harp, random question. Is everything okay with your family? Saw some weird stories." And then another. "Are you in Arizona?" I didn't answer. I couldn't. Not yet. Instead, I returned to the videos. Another clip. The rooftop pool at sunset. Cassidy holding a drink that cost more than my grocery bill, her caption floating over the water, "When your family believes in you." A cold laugh escaped me. Believe in you. They believed in one thing: access. Access to my time, my money, my life. Access to the version of me they needed, not the person I actually was. I clicked away from the stories and tried to breathe through the weight in my chest. But then a direct message pinged. From Jax. Of course. The words on the screen made my stomach twist. "Brody's a star this weekend. You should be proud. Don't worry, we've got him." We. As if he was doing me a favor. As if I owed him gratitude for destroying the last threads holding my sanity together. I didn't respond. I set the phone down. Walked to the kitchen sink. Let cold water run over my hands until the shaking stopped. Then I returned to the counter and picked up the device because I had to know. I had to see how far they dragged me into their fantasy. I opened one final video. The one that made everything click into place. Jax filmed himself from a low angle, Brody behind him, tossing chips in the air like confetti. The camera tilted, capturing the table, the receipts, the cards, the glittering chaos of a life they couldn't afford. Then, for half a second, the camera caught a close-up of a ledger page clipped to a booking folder. The account name at the top, Harper Lane, verified. My heart dropped so fast I felt dizzy. Verified. Meaning someone had presented documentation. Someone had matched a signature. Someone had used my identity to open something big. Suddenly, the screaming at 3 a.m. wasn't just an emergency. It wasn't just panic. It was guilt. It was fear. It was a cover-up. My breath hitched. What had Brody signed? What had he opened? What had he dragged me into? And who else knew? A text pinged again, Mom, this time. "Harper, answer your phone. This is life or death." I turned the screen face down. I didn't answer. Not because I didn't care, God, I had cared my whole life, but because for the first time ever I understood the truth. My family hadn't stumbled into a crisis. They had created one. And they had used my name to finance it. I stared at the rain against the glass, my reflection faint and unfamiliar. This wasn't a problem I could fix. This wasn't a fire I could put out. This was a reckoning. and it was only the beginning. I didn't hear anything at first, except the hum of my refrigerator and the distant hiss of Portland rain against the balcony glass. It was peaceful, unnervingly peaceful given everything I'd just seen on my phone. But that quiet only made the tension inside me sharper, like something was coiling, gathering strength, waiting to strike the moment I breathed too deeply. I picked up my phone again, knowing I shouldn't. Knowing nothing good would come from diving back into the curated disaster that was my siblings' online presence. But curiosity wasn't what pulled me back, it was dread. A sense that the surface-level chaos I'd seen last night wasn't even half the story. And I was right. The first video that loaded wasn't vanity or luxury or bragging rights. It was a moment I wasn't supposed to see. A behind-the-scenes glimpse into the trip they thought was private. Cassidy had uploaded a montage, the kind that loops on social platforms, automatically feeding dopamine more than truth. Desert skylines with orange-pink halos, Jeep engines revving, the three of them clinking champagne flutes against the backdrop of Cathedral Rock. But halfway through the montage, the tone shifted. The camera grew shaky, the lighting dimmed, and Brody's voice drifted through the speakers, low and excited. "Dude, tonight is gonna be insane." Jax hooked us up. Hooked them up with what no one clarified because the clip cut abruptly to a boutique dressing room again. Cassidy in a shimmering emerald dress, her hair cascading down her shoulders, like she didn't have a care in the world. She pushed her sunglasses onto her head, leaned closer to the camera, and whispered dramatically, "Big sis would never." She winked. The comments below erupted in laughing emojis, praise heart filters. None of them knew what those three words actually meant. Big sis would never look this gorgeous, never live this life, or never say no. Because that last one, that was the truth. At least until last night. Big sis would never say no. Not until she finally did. I scrolled further. Another clip autoplayed with a drone shot over a canyon lake, sunlight fragmenting off the water. On the yacht below, I spotted Brody holding a bottle of champagne bigger than his forearm. Cassidy danced on the bow, her sundress whipping around her in the wind. Jax filmed everything with the confidence of someone who thought laws were just suggestions other people followed. Then the camera zoomed in on something I'd missed the first time I watched these clips. A stack of black chips, high-value chips. The kind casinos only issued to players with pre-approved financial backing. The kind that required verified identity, verified income. My pulse kicked. I replayed the clip. There, just beyond the pile of chips, was a folded piece of paper pinned under a glass. I paused the video. The lighting was terrible, the angle was worse. But the header of the document had 3 clear letters, LAN. It wasn't proof, not yet. But it was a breadcrumb. One that led directly to me. I kept scrolling. The next video wasn't glamorous. It was chaotic. A high-limit poker room flickered under dim gold lighting. The camera shook wildly as Cassidy filmed the table from too close. Brody and Jax leaned over the felt stacks of chips, teetering precariously between them. A dealer in a crisp vest looked uncomfortable, not scared, just wary. The way employees looked at people who had been drinking too much, winning too loudly, or losing too fast. "Brody's on fire tonight," Cassidy shouted over the clatter of chips. Jax whooped. Brody slammed another stack onto the table, practically vibrating with adrenaline. But something else caught my eye in the shifting reflections of the chrome fixtures above the table. A membership card, teal, gold accents, exactly like the high-tier card in my wallet. I leaned closer to the screen, my pulse quickening. When the dealer collected the bet, the membership card slid slightly, just enough for a single letter to glint in the reflection. H. I felt my stomach drop. Before panic could take root, another video loaded. This one was Cassidy alone, sitting in a velvet chair in the hotel's upscale restroom, gold taps, marble walls, the whole 9 yards. She flipped the camera toward herself, pursed her lips, and whispered conspiratorially, "Manifesting my millionaire era." Behind her shoulder on the marble counter was a shopping bag. Designer, white and black, expensive, a luxury boutique logo. Inside the bag, barely visible, was a receipt poking out from the tissue paper. The corner of the receipt reflected in the mirror, and this time the name wasn't blurry. This time the name was crystal clear. Harper Lane. I froze so completely I didn't even blink. My name on a receipt for a purchase I didn't make in a city I wasn't in for a person I wasn't with. The room suddenly felt smaller, the air heavier. I replayed the last 5 seconds. Paused, zoomed in, no doubt, no error. Harper Lane, card ending in 0432, amount $1976.43. Everything inside me went quiet, the kind of quiet that comes not from peace, but from devastation. From the recognition of a truth you've been avoiding for so long it finally catches you by the throat. But the hits kept coming. The next clip appeared with a dramatic whoosh of music, clearly Jax's edit, overproduced and dripping with ego. He swung the camera around the private suite, showing champagne buckets, a mountain of chips, Balenciaga sneakers, spilled drinks, and Brody doing some awkward half-dance on the sofa. Family weekend, Jax shouted. Courtesy of he grinned into the camera. Well, actually, let's keep some things private. At the bottom of the frame, almost hidden behind the champagne bucket, I saw another document. Not a receipt this time. Something worse. A credit line form. And this one had been fully captured by accident. Account holder. Harper Lane Credit. Limit $25,000. Verification approved signature. H. Lane. My heartbeat thundered. I held the phone tighter than I should have, fingers digging into the case. No. Not possible. I hadn't signed anything. I hadn't authorized anything. I hadn't even known where they were staying until their stories went viral. Someone had used my name, my card number, my credit profile, and someone had forged my signature. I couldn't breathe for a moment. Images blurred, noise drowned out thought. Then slowly clarity crept back in. Brody did this. He had done something reckless and illegal and unforgivable, not just for himself, not just for fun, but in my name. I should have stopped, closed the app, walked away. But the algorithm had already sensed my pulse, my shock, my fixation. Another video loaded before I could stop it. This one was a live stream. Brody again, but he looked different now. Sweaty, amped, eyes blown wide like a man who hadn't slept in 2 days. "We're going all in," he shouted. "Big moment, big win." Cassidy cheered beside him. Jax yelled something unintelligible. The camera swung wildly until it captured a dealer counting chips. $50, $60, $70,000. I felt a sick wave roll through me. My brother, the golden child we all catered to, the one my parents worshipped, was burning through money. I didn't have money. I didn't authorize money that didn't belong to him. In my name. My phone buzzed again. A text from my mother. "Harper, they're saying the card is declined. What did you do? What did I do?" The audacity, the unbelievable gall. I opened my messages from Cassidy. A new one had arrived 30 seconds ago. "Just send the money. You know you're the only one who can." A chill ran across my arms. The only one who can, not the only one who should, not the only one responsible, the only one they could manipulate. I reopened the high-limit poker video and forced myself to watch it one more time. This time, not as a sister, not as a daughter, but as a woman trying to understand the scope of the disaster she'd just been dragged into. Then I noticed something I'd missed earlier. Right as the camera panned across the felt table, a security guard stepped into frame, approaching fast, jaw tight, expression tense. He said something to Brody. Brody shoved him. The guard grabbed Brody's arm. The camera fell sideways, capturing only the feet of people scrambling. Then the video cut. My breath caught. That wasn't fun. That wasn't partying. That wasn't luxury. That was a man spiraling into something dangerous, illegal, chaotic, and dragging my name, my finances, and my future with him. I sat there, phone trembling in my hands, heart hammering so loudly I could hear it in my ears. I thought the worst part of last night was telling my parents no. But no. The worst part was realizing they had never told me the truth. They hadn't called at 3 a.m. because Brody was hurt. They'd called it 3 a.m. because Brody's lies, debts, and crimes had finally come crashing down, and I was the collateral damage they had been counting on. My screen dimmed. My reflection stared back, shocked, exhausted, furious. For the first time in my adult life, I whispered aloud the question that had been growing quietly inside me for years. What else have they done with my name? There was no answer, just rain tapping against the glass, steady and relentless. I locked my phone, pressed it face down, leaned forward until my elbows hit the counter. The truth was no longer creeping. It wasn't subtle or hidden or ignorable. It was roaring now. My family hadn't just taken advantage of me. They had built an entire fantasy economy on my back, and it was about to collapse. My bedroom was still dark when the sound tore through it, not the gentle vibration of a morning alarm, not the soft ping of a reminder. This was violent, urgent, a phone ringing with the desperation of someone banging on a locked door. I opened my eyes to darkness so deep it felt like it had weight. The red glow of my digital clock read 3:00 a.m., sharp. The ringing didn't stop. It grew louder, angrier, vibrating across the nightstand like the device itself was panicking. For a few seconds I stayed still, suspended between sleep and dread, not ready to face whatever waited on the other end. My instincts knew it was them. My body knew it was bad. My heart knew it would cost me something. But I reached for the phone anyway. Mom! Of course, I let it ring. It rang again instantly. Then Dad, then Mom, then Dad. Rapid fire like coordinated explosions. I pressed accept before my nerves could convince me otherwise. The line connected to pure chaos. Harper. My mother screamed, her voice cracking with hysteria. Oh God, Harper, your brother is in the hospital. I sat up straight, sheets tangling around my legs. What happened? I asked, but she barreled over me. He's in agony. They won't give him the strong medication until someone pays $17,000. They're refusing to treat him properly unless Dad ripped the phone away. Harper, listen to me, he barked, breathless. This is serious. He's in the ER right now. Security tackled him, broke his ribs. They think maybe one of them punctured something. He's screaming in pain. We need that money immediately. I blinked, my mind fighting through groggy confusion and sharp suspicion. Why are they asking for $17,000 up front? I said slowly. Hospitals don't they do when the patient can't provide insurance information, Mom cried in the background. They said he signed something wrong. They said he put the wrong information. Please, Harper, they're withholding treatment. The word signed sliced through my half-awake fog. Signed. A signature. Whose? For one long second, I couldn't speak. Harper, Dad snapped. Stop being difficult. You're wasting time. I swallowed. My room felt colder, like someone had opened the window and let winter inside. I'm trying to understand what happened, I managed. Was he drunk? Did he fall? Why did security tackle him? Dad exhaled sharply, angry at my hesitation. He got emotional at the tables, okay? They overreacted. That's not the point. The point is, he needs medical care right now. And unless you wire $17,000, he won't get it. My heartbeat thudded in my ears. Tables, the poker room, the high-limit bets, the membership card, my name, my receipt, my credit profile. Dad, I said quietly, did Brody use my information tonight? What, he snapped. No, why would you ask something like that? This isn't about paperwork. It's about your brother dying in pain because you're sitting on your hands. Mom wailed loudly as if on cue. Harper, please, we maxed every card we have. We tried to send money. We did everything we could. Nothing went through. You're the only one who can help. There it was. The script I'd been trained to respond to since childhood. You're the only one. You're the strong one. You're the one who fixes everything. My throat tightened, not with guilt this time, but with realization. They weren't calling because they trusted me. They were calling because they expected me to absorb the fallout. Again, always. Harper, Dad barked. Why are you quiet? Get your laptop. Do the wire. Now. I pressed my fingers to my temple, trying to steady my breath. I need to know if he used my name. I repeated. Mom shrieked, "Forget the name. He needs medication, he needs surgery, he is suffering, Harper." Then a new voice entered the background, young, frantic male. "He signed the wrong paper," the voice yelled. "Tell her to hurry. Signed, paper, wrong." I felt my chest ache, not with panic but with clarity so sharp it almost hurt. I could see it all unfolding now. The receipts, the membership card reflection, the authorization form with my name, the high-limit credit line. He had used my name, he had used my credit, he had signed in my place. And my parents knew, at least enough to be afraid. "Mom," I said calmly, "if Brody used my identity, that's not a mistake. It's a crime." She sobbed harder. "Harper, this is not the time." But it was exactly the time. Because this wasn't just the latest emergency. It was the culmination of years of enabling, years of pretending, years of sacrificing my life for people who never once sacrificed theirs for me. As I sat there in the dark, I felt my old instincts flare: panic, obligation, the need to fix it all, even if it destroyed me. But something else rose too, something cold and clean and steady. My own voice, my own boundaries, my own life. "Harper," Dad shouted, "your brother is in agony. Do you want him to die? Do you want that on your conscience? Do you?" The accusation was so sharp it almost worked. Almost. But then I remembered the designer boutique receipt. My name. The credit line form. My signature forged. The video of Brody laughing, drunk, reckless, placing $5,000 bets like they were pocket change. And suddenly the guilt lost its grip. "No," I said softly. "I'm done." "What?" Mom gasped like the word hit her physically. "I'm not sending anything," I said, my voice steady in a way that surprised even me. Dad sputtered. "Harper Lane, don't you dare!" I closed my eyes. "Call your precious daughter." Silence. Dead heavy silence. Then my mother's voice broke, jagged with disbelief. You can't be serious." "Harper, your brother could die. Call Cassidy." I repeated, calm as snow. "She's with him. Let her handle it." "Cassidy," Dad thundered. "She's a child. She's 24, I replied. "Not a child. Not my responsibility. None of this is my responsibility." Mom sobbed so loudly the phone rattled. I pressed the red button. The call ended. For a moment I just stared at the dark screen, my heart pounding, but my mind crystal clear. Then the phone erupted again, ring after ring after ring, vibrating so hard it nearly slid off the nightstand. I didn't answer. Their screaming spilled into voicemail after voicemail. Threats, pleas, accusations, bargaining, grief, manipulation. The full multi-stage performance of a family who had never been told no. I didn't listen to a single second. Instead, I pressed my thumb against the power button. The screen dimmed, flickered, then went black. The sudden silence washed over me like a warm tide. I set the phone down, rolled onto my back, and let out a breath I felt like I'd been holding for 33 years. My ceiling looked unfamiliar, as if I hadn't really seen it before. The shadows in the corners were softer. My mattress felt warmer. My own breathing seemed louder. I had done something I never believed myself capable of. I had chosen me. No money transferred, no emergency wire, no patching up a disaster I didn't create, just boundaries, real ones for the first time. And in that strange, solemn quiet, I wasn't afraid of what would come next. I felt something else instead. A freedom so fragile and bright, I didn't dare touch it. Maybe I'd pay for this later. Maybe the consequences would crash into my life like a tidal wave. Maybe everything was about to explode. But that wasn't my problem at 3 a.m. My problem was exhaustion. Years of it. And now finally the chance to rest. I turned to my side, pulled my comforter over my shoulder, and exhaled slowly. Sleep returned slower this time, creeping in gently like it wasn't sure it was welcome. But eventually it wrapped around me anyway, warm and heavy, and shockingly peaceful. For the first time in my adult life, my last thought before sleep wasn't about someone else's crisis. It was a promise I whispered into the darkness of my apartment, a promise to myself, quiet and fierce, I'm done carrying people who won't lift themselves. And with that, I fell into the deepest, calmest sleep I'd had in years, unaware that the next morning would shatter everything I thought I understood about my family myself, and the line between helping and saving someone who never actually wants to be saved. I didn't turn my phone back on until the sun was already high, spilling warm light across my living room like the world believed today would be gentle. I wasn't ready for noise or chaos or guilt disguised as family concern. I wasn't even ready for my own reflection. But I knew I couldn't avoid it forever. So I plugged the phone into the charger, sat at the kitchen counter with a steaming mug of coffee, and braced myself. The screen flickered to life. The notifications rolled in like an avalanche. 41 missed calls, dozens of texts, several voicemails, one alert from the Arizona State Police Department. My stomach clenched, but before I could process it, the phone buzzed again, an incoming number from an Arizona area code. I didn't think. I just answered. A calm, male voice filled my ear. Ms. Lane. This is Officer Delgado with the Arizona State Police. Are you able to speak for a moment? My spine straightened automatically. Something in his tone, the professional steadiness, the tiny undercurrent of urgency, told me this wasn't about emotional manipulation or guilt or my parents' dramatic theatrics. This was real. Yes, I managed. I'm here. Thank you, he said. I'm calling regarding a man named Brody Lane, your brother. We have him in holding at the Sedona Private Lodge and Hospital Complex. Before we proceed, can I confirm your full name and your relation to him? Harper Lane, I said quietly. I'm his sister. There was a pause at the other end, the sound of typing, muffled voices in the background. Thank you, Ms. Lane. I'll get straight to the point. Your brother is currently facing several charges under review. He has also identified you as the primary emergency contact and co-guarantor on several documents. We need to clarify your involvement. My heart stuttered. What I whispered. I didn't sign anything. That's what I'd like to discuss, Delgado replied. Last night, Mr. Lane presented a California driver's license with your name, address, and partial personal information, but with his photograph. This ID was used to open a $25,000 credit line at the Lodge Casino. My breath evaporated. He used a fake ID with my name, I whispered. Yes, and he claimed he had your permission, that you would cover any expenses. My lungs refused to work properly. The room felt too bright, my coffee too hot, my hands too cold. I never authorized anything, I said firmly, my voice shaking. I didn't give him permission. I didn't even know where he was staying. I understand, Delgado said gently. We suspected that might be the case, but for protocol we need to confirm. I pressed a hand flat against the counter to steady myself. What exactly did he do? I asked. Another pause. Delgado's tone shifted into something harder, not unkind but factual. Mr. Lane entered a private poker room without proper clearance. When asked to provide verification, he presented the counterfeit ID. He accumulated significant debt, over $20,000 in chips, and became combative when security attempted to escort him out. He struck a security officer. The officer required stitches. Mr. Lane was then restrained and transported to the ER. I closed my eyes. You should also know, he continued, that the hospital required insurance or a cash deposit before administering certain medications. The ID he provided listed you as the financial guarantor. A cold shiver climbed up my spine. My name, I said slowly, is on Brody's hospital paperwork. Yes, ma'am, he said. That is correct. I leaned back against the counter, dizzy with the weight of it. The yelling, the begging, the frantic calls at 3 a.m. They hadn't been about his well-being. They had been about his debt, his fraud, his lies, and about dragging me down with him. Ms. Lane, Delgado continued, we want to determine how much of this you were aware of. Were you at any point involved in arranging funds for your brother's gambling activity? The question hit me like a slap. No, I said immediately. I wasn't there. I didn't authorize anything. I didn't sign anything. I didn't even speak to him yesterday. Another voice murmured in the background. Delgado lowered his tone. There's one more thing. Part of the documentation submitted last night includes a signature we believe to be forged. The signature is meant to be yours. I stared at my own reflection in the microwave door, pale and stunned. My signature, I whispered. But I wasn't there. We know that, he replied. But for legal reasons, we need a formal statement. I swallowed hard. Officer, what is he being charged with at this stage? Delgado said. Forgery, identity theft, felony fraud, assault on security personnel, and presenting counterfeit identification. The words clanged against my skull like metal. Identity theft, felony fraud, forgery, not just mistakes, crimes. My family had always treated money like fire, dangerous, unpredictable, something that burned me every time I got too close. But this was an inferno. A blaze Brody had stoked himself, doused in gasoline, then thrown my name into like kindling. Ms. Lane, Delgado said gently, "Are you safe right now?" The question caught me off guard. "Yes," I said after a moment. "I'm alone. I'm in Portland." "Good," he replied. "Just know you're not under investigation. You're listed as a potential victim in the identity theft portion of the case. We only need your confirmation in writing." My eyes blurred. A victim? I had never heard anyone say that to me before, not seriously, not with authority. My whole life, my family painted me as the villain when I set boundaries, the savior when I didn't, the bank account when they wanted something, the ungrateful monster when I finally refused. But a victim of their actions, of my brother's recklessness. It hit somewhere deep inside me. "Officer," I said quietly, "why did my parents say the hospital wouldn't treat him without me paying? They were told the credit line was in your name," he answered, "and they attempted to use it. But the lodge declined additional charges due to suspicious activity." My hand trembled. Suspicious activity. Suspicious like fraud. Suspicious like someone forging my signature. I swallowed. "Is he okay?" I finally asked. "He has 2 broken ribs and contusions," Delgado said. "He's stable but under observation. The lodge pressed charges due to the altercation, and he's being transferred to holding once cleared." I nodded slowly, even though he couldn't see me. "Ms. Lane," he added gently, "I know this is a lot. But your cooperation helps us separate you from your brother's actions." I almost laughed, a bitter, exhausted sound. "That's the story of my life, officer," I murmured, "trying to separate myself from my brother's actions." He paused as if he heard the truth inside that sentence. "We'll email you the forms shortly. Please take your time." We ended the call. My kitchen felt colder, my coffee untouched, my body taut as a wire. Before I could move, a new voicemail notification popped up, the one recorded at 3:04 a.m., right before I turned my phone off. I pressed play. My mother's voice poured through the speaker, breathless, panicked, hysterical. "They said your card was declined. Why would you do this to him, Harper? Why would you embarrass your brother like this? Why would you make him suffer?" I froze. My card. The card I'd canceled 2 years ago. The card no one should have access to. The card that matched the last digits on the receipt I saw online. The voicemail ended. Another one began automatically, a soft click, then Cassidy's voice trembling and angry. "Just send the money, sis, before the news gets out. Please, don't ruin all of this ruined for whom, them, or me." I ended the playback before the next message could start. My entire world was shifting, not slowly or subtly, but violently, like plates under the earth, grinding into new shapes. I stood there, breathing carefully, trying to stay rooted as the truth settled over me. Brody hadn't made a mistake. He hadn't slipped. He hadn't been framed. He had deliberately used my identity, my financial credibility, my clean record. And my parents knew something was wrong. Maybe not everything. Maybe not the full extent. But enough. Enough to know he was in trouble long before they called me. Enough to know I was the safety net, the bailout plan, the bank. Always the bank. But for once I wasn't. For once, I had said no. And now the fallout, the real fallout, was coming. Not emotional manipulation, not guilt, not tears, legal consequences, police involvement, identity theft, felony fraud. I set the phone down and leaned both hands on the counter, letting the weight of it all settle into my bones. Then slowly a strange steadiness filled me. This wasn't just about Brody. This was about everything they'd done with my name for years, everything they'd taken for granted, everything they'd built on the assumption that I would never walk away. Well, I had walked away. And now I knew the truth. The storm wasn't something I needed to fear. The storm had been my family. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't standing in the rain waiting to be struck. I was safely inside, watching the thunder roll in from a distance, realizing I wasn't the one who needed saving. I was the one finally saving myself. I had barely ended the call with Officer Delgado when my phone buzzed again, not with another official alert, but with a flood of Instagram notifications that lit up my lock screen like a fireworks show gone wrong. Mentions, tags, DMs, comments. My heart dropped. I tapped the first notification, and the moment the feed loaded, the world I'd tried to keep separate from my online life detonated in my face. Cassidy was live streaming. Of course she was. Her mascara was smeared her cheeks blotchy, and her voice trembled with a kind of frantic desperation she'd learned to weaponize years ago. She stood in the hallway of what looked like a hospital or police station. White tile floors, harsh overhead lights, the faint sound of beeping monitors and shuffling feet behind her. "My brother," she said dramatically into the camera, "is fighting for his life right now. And our own sister, our own blood, is refusing to help him." The comments exploded in real time. What kind of sister is that girl? I'm so sorry. Tag her, shame her." Cassidy sniffed loudly and angled the phone upward, giving herself the perfect, tragic tear down the cheek shot. "I don't understand how someone can be so heartless," she said. $17,000. That's nothing to Harper. She makes 6 figures. She has everything. All we asked was for her to save our brother. I felt the blood drain from my face. My fingers tightened around the phone until they ached. This wasn't a private crisis anymore. Cassidy had made it a public execution. Before I could process the shock, she pressed a few buttons, and suddenly a voicemail played through the livestream speaker, my mother's voice shrill and panicked. "Harper, please. He's vomiting blood. They won't treat him unless we pay. How can you do this to him?" Cassidy stopped the recording at its most dramatic point and looked back into the camera, her voice cracking. She didn't answer. She just hung up. We are out here alone while he suffers. My chest tightened so violently I had to put a hand on the counter to steady myself. It didn't matter that her version wasn't true. It didn't matter that she'd edited the message, removed context, twisted the reality. The audience didn't care about truth. They cared about a villain. And she had given them one. Me. The comment section spiraled. "Harper is trash. How dare she let her brother suffer? Is she even human? What's her expose her. This is abuse. Your sister is a monster." I swallowed hard, fighting the urge to defend myself, even though I knew there was nothing I could say that wouldn't pour gasoline on the fire. I scrolled down. Cassidy had pinned a comment to the top. "Please share this. People need to know." My hands shook. Another notification popped up. GoFundMe help save Brody Lane launched by Cassidy Lane. My vision swam. I tapped it. The description was unreal. "My brother is in critical condition. Our parents are devastated. Our sister refuses to help us. Please, anything helps." If you have a sibling, imagine how you'd feel watching them suffer because someone who could help simply chose not to. There were already donations, hundreds. The total climbed as I watched. $1,247, then $2,580, then $4,900. I squeezed my eyes shut, nausea rising. Cassidy had turned my private boundary into a public fundraising narrative. She had weaponized strangers' sympathy. She had turned me into the villain in a story she had crafted from lies. My phone buzzed again. A text from a coworker. "Harper, Are you okay? You're all over TikTok right now. My breath stuttered. I opened TikTok reluctantly. The first video on my For You page was another one of Cassidy's posts this time, her recording a hospital hallway with Brody's stretcher being wheeled past. His face was bruised, his ribs wrapped, his expression dazed with sedation. The caption, "He's fighting. Please pray. Our sister won't help." The comments were even worse here. Unforgivable. Who raised Harper? She should be sued. She's disgusting. Expose her workplace. Boycott her company until she pays. My chest tightened painfully. A wave of cold fear rushed through me. Doxing. People were already piecing together my LinkedIn, my employer, my city, my life. And all because my sister wanted to shame me into fixing their disaster. I set the phone down, breathing shallowly. I pressed both palms against the counter, grounding myself. I hadn't done anything wrong, but they had made sure the world believed otherwise. Another ping. A DM from a stranger, "I hope you rot. How dare you let your brother die?" Another, "I found your work email. Pay the bill or we will." Another, "You're a failure of a human." I closed the app, my pulse hammering. My hands trembled uncontrollably now. I wasn't just dealing with family drama. I was dealing with a digital mob. Before I could gather myself, another notification appeared, this one from the boutique in Flagstaff. A screenshot, sent anonymously. It showed a receipt with my name on it. Again. Authorization, H. Lane purchase, luxury garment, amount 1, 976.43. No doubt anymore. My identity had been used, repeatedly. The next link was worse. A still image taken from security footage of the lodge poker room. In it, my brother sat at the table, chips piled around him, and in his hand a card. My membership number, my name. A sick ache unfurled in my stomach. The comments underneath the leaked image had already turned it into a conspiracy. So Harper was involved. She funded his gambling. No wonder she won't help now she's scared. She must be covering something. I forced myself to breathe slow and deep. Then my phone buzzed again. A text from Jax. "You should have sent the money. None of this had to blow up." My jaw clenched so hard it hurt. None of this had to blow up. He said that as though I was the problem. As though their lies, their theft, their recklessness were not the reason everything had exploded. I blocked him. Immediately. My phone buzzed again, more notifications from Cassidy. She had posted another clip. This one of her crying into her hands. "It's hard," she sobbed. "It's so hard knowing your own sister doesn't care. But we're grateful for the kindness of strangers. You guys are the only ones helping us." Behind her in the hallway, I saw my mother pacing back and forth, wringing her hands. My father sitting with his head in his hands. Both of them looked exhausted. Distraught. But I also saw something else. A nurse at the station behind them had turned her back, deliberately refusing to be part of the spectacle. Someone in the comments noticed too. "Why are you filming in a hospital? That's not okay." The replies drowned it out. I closed the app, overwhelmed. My thumb hovered over the power button again just to shut it all out, but I stopped myself. There were some truths I needed to face, no matter how painful. I dialed the hospital directly. A tired nurse answered, her tone clinical and weary. "Yes, Brody Lane is here. Yes, he's stable. No, we're not withholding life-saving treatment. No, we cannot accept credit lines from a casino to cover medical costs." I exhaled slowly. "Is my name attached to his paperwork?" I asked. A rustle of papers. "Yes," she said. "You're listed as his financial guarantor. Did you provide that information?" "No," I whispered. A pause. "I'm very sorry, Ms. Lane, but you may want to speak to our billing department and to the police investigating the ID issue. Billing, police, identity theft." My reality was crashing into place. Before I could hang up, another call came through Flagstaff Lodge security. A manager stern-voiced. "We're calling regarding a $25,000 credit line opened under your name. We need immediate confirmation whether you will be honoring the debt or disputing the identity." I'm disputing it, I said instantly. I did not open anything. Another pause. I figured as much, he said. The signature did not match. We're filing formal charges. Expect documents today. Formal charges. Everything was unraveling. Everything except me. I hung up. My phone buzzed again, this time with a message from my mother. A single line. You're killing him. I didn't respond. Then my father. He's asking why you hate him. Then Cassidy. You're making this worse. Just fix it. Just fix it. My whole childhood in 2 words. I set the phone down, the resentment burning slow and deep, not explosive but steady like coals that had been smoldering inside me for years. My family hadn't just failed to protect me. They had thrown me to the wolves the moment I refused to let them sink their claws deeper. I took one long breath, then another, and for the first time since this nightmare began, the truth crystallized in me with absolute clarity. This was no longer my problem. This was their creation. Their consequence. Their collapse. Not mine. And however loud the world screamed, however vicious the comments became, however desperately my family clawed at the remains of their fantasy, I would not step into their fire again. They lit it. They could burn in it without me. The knock on my door came just after noon, a sharp, insistent rhythm that didn't belong to neighbors' delivery drivers or anyone who respected boundaries. I froze with my mug halfway to my lips, every nerve in my body lighting up. I wasn't expecting anyone. And after the hellish whirlwind of the last 12 hours, unexpected knocks didn't feel random. They felt deliberate. I set the mug down, walked softly across the hardwood and looked through the peephole. No one was there, just the hallway. Quiet. Empty. Then the knock came again, this time from my phone vibrating violently on the counter. A video call request. From Dad. I stared at the screen, pulse kicking, but I didn't answer. I let it ring until it timed out. Seconds later, a text appeared. Answer right now. This is serious. Serious. Everything had been serious long before last night. It just hadn't been serious for them until their golden son's consequences finally caught up. The phone buzzed again, another call from Dad. Then another. Then Mom. It was relentless, desperate. I didn't pick up, not until I saw the next notification. We're at the police station. My stomach clenched. I pressed accept. The screen opened to chaos. My mother sat in a metallic folding chair, her hair disheveled, her mascara smeared. Her hands trembled as she held the phone close to her face, eyes wide with fury and fear. Dad stood behind her, pacing like a man on the verge of shattering. Harper, Mom began, her voice raw. I cannot believe what you've done. I blinked. What I've done? Dad leaned in, jaw tight. Your brother is being charged, Harper. Charged. Do you understand what that means? Felony fraud? Identity theft? Assault? He could go to prison. Yes, I said calmly. I know, Mom gasped, horrified. You knew I spoke to Officer Delgado, I replied. He called me this morning. Dad's eyes flashed. So you knew and still refused to help. You let him suffer in that hospital bed. You let him get booked like a criminal. He forged my name, I said sharply, on multiple documents. He used a fake ID with my information. He committed fraud with my identity. Mom flinched as if the truth physically stung her. He said you gave him permission. I stared at her, and you believed that, really? The silence that followed was damning. Dad swallowed hard. Sweetheart, he was desperate. You know your brother hasn't been well, he isn't sick, I snapped. He's reckless. He's manipulative. He's been coddled his entire life because you two refused to hold him accountable. Mom choked out, How dare you talk to us like that after everything we've done for you? A laugh escaped me. It wasn't funny. It was painful, sharp, bitter. Everything you've done for me, I repeated. Or everything I've done for you. Dad scowled. This isn't about old grievances. This is about your brother. He made mistakes, yes. But families fix mistakes. They don't abandon each other. I didn't abandon anyone, I said evenly. Brody abandoned every boundary I ever had, and you both helped him." Dad slammed his palm against the table behind him, rattling the camera. "If you don't help us now, he's going to jail." I stared at them, letting the truth settle fully in my heart. I didn't cause this. I didn't choose this. I didn't forge anything. I didn't gamble tens of thousands. I didn't assault security personnel. I didn't livestream lies to strangers. Brody had done this. They had enabled it. And now I was supposed to be the parachute again. No, never again. Harper, Mom whispered, voice cracking. "Please, please, your brother is so scared. You should see him. He's shaking. He keeps asking for you." My throat tightened, not out of guilt but out of grief. The grief of seeing the same pattern replayed for decades. Brody makes a mess. Brody cries. Brody begs. Mom breaks down. Dad demands solutions. And I clean it up. But not this time. For what I asked softly. For me to save him. Again. For you to show you still love us, Mom sobbed. I closed my eyes. Love has nothing to do with throwing money at consequences. Dad leaned closer, rage simmering. "If you hang up now, Harper, you are dead to this family." Something inside me cracked open, not in pain, but relief. I met his glare with calm clarity. "I didn't kill the relationship," I said quietly. "You buried it under years of expectations and lies." Mom covered her mouth. Dad's face contorted with fury. Then a commotion behind them caught my attention. The sound of a metal door opening, harsh fluorescent lights, shifting voices echoing down the hallway. A police officer walked past. Another figure followed, the unmistakable shape of my brother, hands cuffed in front of him, his face swollen, bruised and pale. Brody. He looked directly at the camera. "Harper," he rasped, voice hoarse. "Please, I'm sorry, just get me out of here, I'll pay you back. Just 60 days, please." My breath hitched, not with compassion, but with the crushing awareness of how many times I had heard that same promise, that same tone, that same performance. I didn't blame him, not entirely. He was a product of a system my parents created, a house of cards built on protection, excuses, and denial. But I wasn't a card anymore. I was the wind. "I can't help you," I whispered. His face twisted, not into remorse, but anger. Raw, venomous anger. "You selfish." The officer pulled him forward before he could finish. "You're a monster," Mom screamed. "A monster. How could you let this happen to your own brother?" Dad shoved his face back toward the camera. "This family will never forgive you." I felt no shame, no fear, no regret, just heartbreak and clarity intertwined. "I hope one day," I said softly, "you forgive yourselves." I pressed end. The screen went black. Silence filled my kitchen like a tidal wave, but this time it didn't drown me. It steadied me. It wrapped around me like armor. No more calls came, no more texts, no more demands, just an eerie, liberating quiet. I stood there staring at my reflection in the black screen. Then I exhaled slowly. My legs felt weak, so I walked to the couch and sat down. I let the weight of the moment settle into my bones. I let the jagged edges soften. I let the truth anchor itself inside me. I could finally breathe. But peace didn't last long. Because minutes later my email pinged a new message from my HR department. Subject line: urgent, immediate action required. Cold dread slid down my spine. I opened it. "Harper, we need to discuss a situation involving your name circulating on social media. Please report to the HR office at 9 a.m. tomorrow." Attached was a screenshot, a TikTok clip, a clip of Cassidy crying in the police station parking lot, mascara streaked, saying, "My sister is letting my brother rot in jail." Another screenshot, user comments tagging my company, complaints, accusations, threats. A third screenshot, my LinkedIn profile, my photo, my job title, my employer, all posted under the caption, "This woman refuses to help her dying brother." The blood rushed to my head, anger, fear, betrayal, exhaustion. They hadn't just destroyed their own reputations. They had dragged mine into the mud. They had endangered my career, my stability, my safety. All because I said one word, no. I covered my face with both hands, breathing slowly, letting the storm pass through me instead of consuming me. Then I lowered my hands, looked out the window and whispered to myself, they won't take anything else from me. Not my peace, not my identity, not my livelihood, not anymore. My phone buzzed, one final text, from an unknown number. You think you're safe? This isn't over. I stared at the message, heart steady, because for the first time in my life I knew exactly who I was, and I wasn't afraid of them anymore. I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, the images hit me again. Brody in handcuffs, my parents screaming, Cassidy live-streaming my name into the mouths of strangers who wanted a villain. My job on the line. My reputation dragged into a storm I hadn't created but was now forced to stand in the center of. By morning, the world outside my window glowed in soft gold, the kind of gentle Portland light that usually soothed me. But today it felt mocking, like the universe had mistaken my catastrophe for a new dawn. I forced myself out of bed, showered, dressed, and walked into HR at exactly 9 a.m. The office smelled like coffee printer ink and that faint underlying sterility of corporate spaces. My footsteps echoed on the polished floor as I approached the glass-walled conference room where two people waited, Amanda from HR and Marcus, the firm's legal advisor. They stood the moment I entered. Harper, Amanda said gently, "Please come in." Her tone wasn't angry or cold, it was careful, the kind of careful reserved for someone in crisis. I sat down slowly. My palms were damp, but I kept my expression even. Amanda folded her hands. "We want you to know, first of all, we're not here to accuse you of anything. We're here to understand what's happening." Marcus nodded. "Your name has been circulated online alongside allegations that could impact the company if not addressed." I exhaled shakily. "I know." "Can you tell us what's going on?" Amanda asked softly. I swallowed hard. My family used my identity without my knowledge. My brother forged my name on financial documents at a lodge casino in Arizona. When he was arrested, my sister went live on social media and told the world I refused to help. She made it seem like I caused everything. She mentioned my job, she tagged my city. Now people are sending emails, calling, leaving comments. They're angry. They think I'm responsible for things I didn't do. Amanda and Marcus exchanged a meaningful look. That aligns with what we suspected, Marcus said. "We've already spoken to corporate communications. They've reviewed the online posts and determined there's no factual evidence linking your behavior to any misconduct. But we need documentation from you confirming the identity theft case. I spoke with Officer Delgado yesterday," I said. "He's sending me the formal report." "Good," Marcus replied. "Once we have that, we can formally log this as a victim's case, not a conduct issue." Until then, he handed me a folder. "What is this?" I asked. "A temporary protective plan," Amanda said gently, "to prevent any further impact on your workplace." Inside were 3 documents: a communication script for my coworkers, a harassment reporting procedure, and an official notice stating that any social media claims about me would not be investigated internally without independent evidence. I blinked, overwhelmed. You're protecting me, of course," she said. "Harper, you're a valued employee. We don't punish people for being targeted." A tightness in my chest loosened just a little. For the first time since the nightmare began, someone wasn't blaming me. Someone wasn't telling me to fix it. Someone wasn't screaming that I'd destroyed everything. "Thank you," I whispered. But the relief was short-lived. Marcus hesitated. "There is one concern." My stomach lurched. "What?" He slid a tablet across the table. On the screen was a screen recording of Cassidy's live stream, paused on the part where the comments demanded my employer fire me. "I don't want you to panic," Marcus said. "But this video has over 600,000 views. Your name is being circulated. Your LinkedIn profile was posted. Your workplace is tagged in several threads." I swallowed hard. "We've already taken steps to block harassment," he continued. But I recommend you prepare. The digital mob may continue for a while. I nodded slowly, hands trembling under the table. They noticed but didn't comment. Do you need time off? Amanda asked softly. Mental health days, remote work adjustments, anything? I shook my head. I need routine. I need something normal. She nodded. Then we'll support that. We wrapped up the meeting. They walked me to the elevator like I was something fragile they didn't want to break. The moment the doors closed, my facade cracked. I leaned against the cold metal breath, trembling, tears burning at the corners of my eyes. But I didn't break. I held myself together long enough to step out on my floor walk to my desk and sit down. My coworkers glanced at me, some curious, some concerned, but no one said anything, until Ethan from the engineering team approached cautiously. Hey, he said quietly, I don't know what's going on, but if you need anything, I mean literally anything, just say the word. His kindness made something deep inside me ache. Thanks, I whispered. I tried to focus on my work, I really did. But my phone kept lighting up, buzzing, vibrating, until I had to turn it face down just to breathe. At lunch, I checked it again. Big mistake. 3 new voicemail messages from Mom, 8 texts from Dad, dozens of notifications from social media, a message from my cousin in Texas asking if everything online was true, and then a screenshot from a stranger Cassidy posted. Again, I opened it. My sister was sitting in the hotel parking lot wrapped in a blanket like she'd survived a war, tears streaking down her cheeks. I just want to say thank you, she whispered, to everyone who's donated. You've shown more compassion than our own sister. She hasn't reached out, she hasn't apologized. She's pretending she's the victim. But Brody is the one in custody. Brody is the one suffering. Brody is the one who might get prison time. Then she added the part that made my blood run cold. Harper can clear all of this up. She can tell the police the ID wasn't fake. She can tell them she gave permission, but she refuses. My breath hitched. That wasn't just a lie. That was an attempt to manipulate public pressure into pushing me to commit perjury. The comments were vicious. Harper is heartless. She wants her brother in jail. What a sick family dynamic. Protect Brody, ruin Harper. Tag her job again. I felt sick. I opened my texts from Dad. Fix this. Tell the police you authorized it. Do you want your brother to go to prison? We raised you better than this. You are humiliating us. I stared at the messages, fury simmering beneath the heartbreak. They wanted me to lie, to pretend I approved identity theft, to shield Brody again, to destroy my own future to protect his. And then the pièce de résistance. If you don't help, your mother says you are no longer her daughter. The words should have gutted me, but something strange happened instead. I felt lighter, as if something poisonous had finally left my system. Not loved, not wanted, not chosen, unless I was useful. I set my phone down and stared at the drawing board plans on my desk. Clean lines, solid foundations, structures that held weight without collapsing. The opposite of my family. By late afternoon, I was exhausted, mentally, physically, emotionally. The workday blurred into simple motions. Conversations passed like distant echoes. When I finally got home, the silence hit me hard. It wrapped around me like a heavy, warm blanket, and for a moment I didn't move. Then my phone buzzed again. An unknown number. I almost ignored it. But something told me to pick up. Hello, a hesitant female voice. Ms. Lane. Yes, this is Jasmine. I'm a social worker with Sedona Regional Hospital. My heart lurched. What happened? I asked, voice tight. She exhaled softly. I wanted to update you. Your brother is stable. He's been cleared medically and will be transferred to the county holding facility within the hour. I closed my eyes. I also wanted to tell you, she continued gently, that during intake, your brother insisted you would fix everything. He was adamant. He believes you'll post bail, that you'll cover the costs. A lump formed in my throat. I won't, I whispered. I understand, she said, but I wanted you to be prepared. He may reach out again. Your parents may too. I know. There was a long pause. Then she spoke more softly. "You're not responsible for their choices, Ms. Lane, and you're not wrong for protecting yourself." My breath caught. Tears pressed behind my eyes, not from sadness, but from hearing for the first time in years someone say out loud what I had been too afraid to believe. "Thank you," I whispered. After the call ended, I sat on the couch in the dark, letting the truth settle over me like a heavy but necessary blanket. I had lost my family. I had kept my sanity. And I didn't know which one hurt more. But I knew without any doubt that the only path forward, the only path toward freedom, lay in continuing to hold the line. No matter how loud the world screamed, no matter how brutal the backlash became, no matter how relentless my parents or siblings tried to be, I had chosen myself. I had chosen truth. I had chosen peace over chaos. And now, I had to survive the aftermath. I woke the next morning to a kind of quiet that didn't feel peaceful. It felt suspended, as if the world was holding its breath, waiting to see whether I would crumble or finally rise. The sky outside my window was a pale, icy blue, the kind that makes the city look washed clean. But inside my apartment, nothing felt clean. Everything felt stained by the night before. My phone lay on the nightstand face down. I didn't want to turn it over. I didn't want to read another message telling me I was a failure of a daughter or a monster of a sister. I didn't want to see another notification showing my name plastered across internet threads, or another clip of Cassidy crying her crocodile tears. I wanted silence. But silence never lasts long in a life built on other people's emergencies. I finally reached for the phone, bracing myself, and turned it on. Instant chaos. 173 notifications. My stomach clenched as I scrolled through the flood-missed calls, messages from numbers I didn't know, emails from strangers, social media tags that were equal parts pity and poison. But one alert stopped me cold. Sedona County Sheriff's Office, voicemail received. My breath caught in my throat. I pressed play. A composed female voice filled my ear. "Ms. Lane, this is Deputy Harper from the Sedona County Sheriff's Office. We're calling to inform you that your brother, Mr. Brody Lane, has been transferred to county custody. Additionally, during intake, he attempted to list you as financial guarantor for legal representation. We require clarification. Please call us back." I pressed the phone to my forehead and closed my eyes. Of course he had, because in Brody's mind, consequences were never real until they touched him, and even then they were never his to carry. Not when I existed. Not when I was convenient. A text came through from Mom at that exact moment, as if summoned by the weight of the voicemail. "Call me now. We have a plan." I ignored it. Another message arrived from Dad. "We found a lawyer. He says we only need $12,000 up front. They're waiting on you." Then the next one, "Don't make this harder than it already is." And finally, "If you let him go to jail, he will never survive. That will be on you." The familiar guilt, the conditioned response they had built into my bones, rose like a reflex. But it didn't stick. It slid off me this time like water hitting something newly waterproofed. I replied with a single message: "Stop contacting me." Before I could lock my phone, a new email appeared, this one from the district court system. I opened it cautiously. State of Arizona Court Appointment. Notice, Victim Services Division. The letter explained that because my identity had been used unlawfully, I was considered an impacted victim and had the right to representation notifications, restitution claims, and appeals. At the bottom, suspect Brody Lane. Charges felony fraud, identity theft, forgery, assault. I had to grip the counter to steady myself. Seeing the words written formally, it made everything real in a way emotion hadn't. It wasn't just family drama. It wasn't just chaos. It was crime, documented prosecutable crime, committed using my existence. I sat down heavily at my kitchen table, staring at the screen until my heartbeat regulated. Then I forced myself to call Victim Services. A woman answered kindly, her tone practiced and warm. "Ms. Lane, I'm so sorry you're going through this. We're here to help." I didn't expect to cry, not in front of a stranger. But her sympathy cracked something in me. I wiped at my eyes, embarrassed. I don't even know what to do. That's okay, she said gently. You don't have to know. That's why we're here. In the background, I heard the shuffle of papers. She walked me step by step through the documents I'd received, the statements I needed to sign, the protective measures available. When we reached the end, she asked, "Do you feel safe, Ms. Lane?" The question caught me off guard. Was I safe from Brody? Yes, he was in custody, from the mob online, not entirely, from my parents, emotionally no. Financially? No. Psychologically? Absolutely not. But physically? Yes, I'm safe, I whispered. Just tired. That's understandable, she said. One last thing, your brother listed you as someone who might assist with bail. Would you like us to remove your name from all future legal notices? Yes, I said without hesitation. Remove me completely. Done, she replied. You'll get a confirmation shortly. And Ms. Lane. You're not wrong for setting boundaries. This isn't your burden to carry. When I hung up, the apartment felt softer, brighter, like reclaiming a piece of myself made the whole space breathe differently. That peace lasted roughly 10 minutes, because that's when Cassidy posted again. This time it wasn't tears, it was rage. The video opened with her pacing in the worn-out parking lot of the county jail, hair pulled into a messy bun face flushed with fury. She won't help, Cassidy spat into the camera. She won't even answer Mom. She's out there living her fancy life while we're drowning. My brother is in jail and my sister refuses to step up. Behind her, someone, probably Jax, muttered, "Tell them about the credit line." Cassidy spun the camera. "Oh, you want receipts? Here." Brody used her credit line because she told him he could. I inhaled sharply. A blatant lie. She's just pretending to be a victim, Cassidy continued. Manipulating everyone, acting like she didn't know. But she did. She just wants to watch us fall apart. The comments poured in like acid. Harper is sick. Expose her job again. Call the news. She should be locked up too. My hands trembled as I backed out of the app. I went to my email. 47 new messages from strangers. All vile. Then a message from HR checking in on my mental state. Then one from my boss, just 4 words, "Hang in there, we know." The kindness almost broke me again. I needed air, space, something that wasn't glowing through a screen and screaming my name. I grabbed my coat and stepped outside into the crisp Portland afternoon. The air smelled like rain and pine. Clean. Honest. Nothing like the suffocating toxicity online. I walked, past the coffee shop I loved, past the bookstore where I lost myself on quiet weekends, past the park where families laughed completely untouched by the hurricane swallowing my life. I ended up on a bench overlooking the river. The water moved steadily, unconcerned with human chaos. A reminder that the world kept going even when mine felt like it was collapsing. My phone buzzed again. I almost ignored it, but the sender made me pause. Unknown number. Voicemail transcription available. I hit play. A deep voice, older, weary. "Ms. Lane, this is Attorney Milton Ross, counsel for Mr. Brody Lane. Your parents have informed me that you may be willing to sign a statement absolving your brother of intentional fraud. If this is correct, please contact my office immediately. Doing so would substantially impact the severity of his charges." I laughed out loud, a sound full of disbelief, bitterness, exhaustion. They really thought I'd save him again. I deleted the voicemail. Then another message buzzed in. From Dad. A selfie. Of him and Mom sitting on a courthouse bench. Both crying. Both red-faced. Both looking at the camera with an expression meant to break me. The caption, "This is what you're doing to your family." I stared at it. My emotions shifting not into guilt, not into fear, but into something sharper. Clarity. They weren't grieving Brody's situation. They were grieving the loss of their favorite tool, their favorite financial cushion, their favorite scapegoat. Me. I deleted the photo, blocked the number for the first time in my life. Then I sat on the bench overlooking the water and breathed slowly, deeply, letting the truth settle in my bones. I had not caused this. I was not responsible. I had not abandoned them. I had simply stopped letting them abandon me. And for the first time since this nightmare began, I felt something small but powerful stir inside me. Not hope, not forgiveness, but strength. The kind that comes only after you walk through fire and finally understand it can't burn you anymore. I stood brushed off my coat and walked home, not because everything was okay, but because I finally understood I was stronger than the storm my family created, and I was done letting them pull me back into it. I got the call while I was reheating leftover soup, the kind of simple domestic moment that usually made me feel grounded. The microwave hummed, the room smelled faintly of rosemary and garlic, and for a fleeting second I let myself imagine the day had been normal. Then my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. Instinct told me to ignore it. My life had become a revolving door of unknown callers, strangers with opinions, trolls with threats, reporters pretending to care. But something in me said answer, so I did. "Ms. Lane," a man asked, brisk and professional. "Yes, this is Deputy Carson with the Sedona County Sheriff's Office. We need to inform you of developments regarding your brother's case." My hand tightened around the phone. "What happened?" He exhaled, and the sound carried weight. "Mr. Lane has officially been arraigned." Arraigned. A word that belonged to courtrooms, not family conversations. I swallowed hard. "There are additional charges," the deputy continued. "When officers processed the counterfeit ID, they discovered he had attempted to use multiple profiles linked to your personal information. We're coordinating with financial institutions." My stomach nodded. "Are you saying there were more accounts?" "Yes. It appears your brother attempted to open additional lines of credit under your name." The room spun slightly around me. My hand went numb. I managed to force words out. "I didn't know. I didn't authorize any of that." "We understand," he said quickly. "For that reason, you are listed as a protected victim in the Identity Theft Division." Protected victim. It hurt to hear. It also felt like a door closing behind me, one I could never open again. Not for him, not for my parents, not for any fantasy version of family I used to hold on to. The microwave beeped behind me, startling me back into my body. "There's more," Deputy Carson added. "Your parents attempted to speak on your behalf during the hearing. When they couldn't produce legal authority, the judge instructed them to refrain from further interference." I blinked hard. "They tried to represent me?" "Yes, and they stated you were willing to resolve the matter privately." Heat climbed up my neck. "That's not true. We know," he said calmly. "The court knows. Their statements have been noted and disregarded." I sank into a chair, lowering my forehead into my palm. This was beyond manipulation. This was desperation, merging with delusion. "Deputy," I whispered, "I'm afraid. Not of my brother, but of what my parents might do next." His tone softened. "I understand. If they contact you again in ways that feel threatening, save the messages. We'll document everything." "Thank you," I said, because saying nothing felt rude, even though my insides were shaking. After we hung up, I stared at the steam rising from the soup bowl. Appetite gone. My family wasn't just falling apart. They were grasping for me as they went under, dragging my name, my peace, my entire identity. And now the legal system was officially involved. Before I could gather myself, my phone vibrated again, not a call this time, but a text. A very long one. From Mom. I almost deleted it without reading, but curiosity or habit got the better of me. The message opened with a barrage. "How could you let this happen? Your brother is going to prison. You are letting them destroy his life." Then the pivot. "All you need to do is say he had permission. Just one statement, one sentence. You can save him." Then the guilt. "Do you think you're better than us now with your fancy job and your fancy apartment?" Then the knife. "You were never the child we wanted. Not really." I stopped breathing. The next line cracked like brittle bone. We only kept you because you were useful. Everything inside me chilled. Useful. Not loved, not cherished, not valued. Useful. A tool, a wallet, a safety net. A name they could sign whenever they needed a miracle. It shouldn't have shocked me, but it did. It broke something quietly, permanently. And yet there was more. If you don't fix this, don't bother calling us again. We won't answer. You're not our daughter anymore. My heartbeat slowed. She thought that was a threat. She truly believed abandonment was leverage. But the truth hit me with sudden crystalline clarity. I wasn't losing anything. I was being freed. I placed the phone gently on the table and let the silence wrap around me, a silence not of loneliness, but liberation. Then another message came, this time from Dad. Short, angry, "You are dead to us." I didn't respond, not out of spite, out of self-respect. My phone buzzed again, this time a social media notification. I almost ignored it, but something told me to look. A new post from Cassidy. A picture of her in the parking lot, her eyes swollen, dramatically holding a cardboard sign that read, "My sister let him go to jail." The caption, "If blood can betray you, anyone can." Comments poured in, "Monster sister." "Report her workplace." "Don't stop until she pays." Tagging news outlets now. I locked the phone. My hands were shaking, but not from fear, from anger, from heartbreak, from the injustice of being crucified for crimes I didn't commit, but also from something else, resolve. I wouldn't let this define me. Not my job, not my reputation, not my future, and certainly not my worth. I got up, poured the untouched soup down the drain, and washed the bowl with deliberate, focused movements. My hands steadied as warm water ran over them. A strange, grounding calm took root. Then the doorbell rang. The sound echoed through the apartment like a gunshot. My breath caught. I approached cautiously, looking through the peephole. A uniformed courier stood holding a large envelope. I cracked the door open cautiously. "Yes, delivery for Harper Lane. Requires signature." I signed, accepted the envelope, and shut the door quickly. Inside was paperwork from the Arizona State Court system confirming my status as a victim and informing me that I would be notified of all future proceedings unless I opted out. There was also a letter from Victim Services reminding me I had the right to a restraining order against any involved individuals, including family, if the harassment continued. I set the papers on the counter, feeling the shape of my future shifting in real time. My family had weaponized my silence, my name, my love, my loyalty. Now I had something they couldn't manipulate: boundaries, legal documentation, authority on my side, truth carved into official record. My phone buzzed again, but this time the caller ID made my breath hitch. Aunt Melanie, my mother's sister. The quiet one, the thoughtful one. The only adult who ever treated me like a human instead of a utility. I answered immediately. Her voice was soft, trembling. "Oh, sweetheart, I just saw everything." My throat tightened. "It's bad, yes," she whispered, "but not because of you. None of this is your fault." A tear slid down my cheek. The first one all day. "You didn't ask for this burden," she continued. "You've been carrying their weight your whole life, and now that you put it down, they're furious." I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. "They're saying horrible things," I whispered. "I know," she said gently. "And they don't mean them. They're drowning, and instead of swimming, they're grabbing the closest person and pulling them under." I let that sink in my chest, aching. "You're not wrong for protecting yourself," she added. "You're brave. I wish someone had protected you when you were younger." My breath hitched again. Then she said something that struck me like a lightning bolt. "If they disown you, then you still have family. You have me. You always have." I covered my mouth, emotion surging through me. We talked for a long time, honestly, openly, gently. She told me truths I had been afraid to tell myself. She reminded me of my worth. By the time we hung up, I wasn't healed, but I wasn't alone, and that made all the difference. As I sat on the couch, letting the quiet settle, I felt something new blooming inside my chest, Fragile but fierce. Not revenge, not bitterness, not triumph. Freedom. For the first time in my life, I wasn't reacting to their crisis. I was choosing my future. And even though the storm hadn't passed yet, I could finally see sunlight on the horizon. The next 48 hours passed in a blur that didn't feel like time at all, more like a long, suspended moment where everything kept happening to me while I floated somewhere above it, watching my own life unravel and rebuild at the same time. I worked remotely partly because HR recommended it, partly because I didn't trust myself not to break if one more coworker approached me with that half-concerned, half-curious look. The digital harassment had slowed but not stopped. The emails kept coming. The messages, the comments, some supportive, most hateful, all exhausting. But through the noise, something else began shifting, something steadier, something quieter, something like clarity. By the third morning, an email from the Sedona County Court arrived, simple subject line notice of preliminary hearing, State of Arizona versus Brody Lane. My chest tightened as I opened it. The hearing would be held remotely. Victims were allowed to attend via secure link. I didn't have to go. I didn't have to hear anything. I could pretend none of it was my business. But it was my business. My name had been used. My signature had been forged. My identity had been twisted into a tool for someone else's recklessness. If I didn't face it now, I never would. I clicked to confirm my attendance. And within seconds my phone rang again, this time with a number I recognized. "Deputy Carson, Ms. Lane," he said. "When I picked up, I want to prepare you for what you might see and hear during the proceedings." His voice was steady, but there was something compassionate in it too. Something human. "I understand," I said softly. "Tell me what I need to know." "There will be statements from both sides," he explained. "Your parents may appear. They may attempt to speak on your behalf again, though the judge will likely shut it down if they do." I exhaled shakily. "I'm prepared." "And your brother will be present," he continued. "He may attempt to address you directly. Victims are not required to respond." I nodded, gripping the phone tighter. "Thank you for telling me." "One more thing," he added. "If at any point you feel overwhelmed, you can exit the session. Your participation is voluntary." "I won't exit," I said. "I need to hear it, all of it." He paused. "You're stronger than you think." The words landed somewhere unexpectedly deep. The hearing was scheduled for 11 a.m. At 10:45, I logged in. The screen flickered, then resolved into a virtual courtroom, digital boxes, muted microphones, the state seal glowing behind the judge's bench. My heartbeat pounded in my ears. A new box appeared. Mom. Her face was blotchy eyes, swollen hair pulled back in a rushed bun. Dad sat beside her, jaw-clenched, mouth set in a hard line. Neither looked at the camera directly. They stared off-screen as if refusing to acknowledge that someone outside their orbit could see them like this. Another box opened. Brody. He looked older somehow. The bruises on his face had bloomed into sick mottled purples and greens. His hair was flattened from lack of sleep. His wrists were cuffed in front of him. A deputy stood behind him, expression unreadable. My breath caught. He was still my brother. He was still the boy I shared a childhood with. And he was also the man who had stolen my name without hesitation. "Court is now in session," the judge said. Everything inside me went still. The prosecutor spoke first. Calm, clear, ruthless in his precision. Mr. Lane used a counterfeit ID bearing his sister's name. He forged her signature. He opened a credit line in her name. He incurred debt exceeding $20,000. He attempted to open additional fraudulent accounts. He assaulted security personnel. Each charge landed like a blow: identity theft, forgery, felony fraud, assault. I flinched at the word victim each time it was spoken, because hearing the legal system confirm what I had spent years trying to deny felt surreal. Then it was the defense attorney's turn. A slimy man in an expensive suit who leaned forward as though closeness could sell sincerity. "Your Honor," he began smoothly. Mr. Lane used his sister's name under the belief that she would support him as she has done throughout their lives. This was not malicious. It was desperation and misunderstanding within a family dynamic. The defendant believed he had implicit permission. Implicit permission. The words made my jaw clench so tight my teeth ached. Then the attorney gestured to my parents. His mother and father are here to speak to their family history. The judge nodded. Mom leaned into the camera with trembling lips. Your Honor, Harper always supported us. Always. She paid his school expenses. She helped him when he struggled. She told him she'd never let him fall. My body tensed. That is why he used her name, she continued. He wasn't trying to deceive her. He thought he could pay it back. He thought she would understand. Understand identity theft, fraud. A forged signature. Dad spoke next, voice low but firm. She knows he's not a bad kid. She knows he needed help. We asked her for $17,000, nothing compared to what she makes, and she refused. That's why we're here. My mouth went dry. The judge cleared his throat. Thank you. Now, Ms. Lane. My chest tightened. You may speak if you wish to. Every muscle in my body locked up. My pulse hammered. My vision blurred slightly at the edges. I wasn't required to speak. I could stay silent. No one would blame me. But staying silent was what allowed this cycle to exist in the first place. I unmuted. Your Honor? I said, voice soft but steady. My brother did not misunderstand anything. All eyes flicked toward me. I swallowed. This wasn't the first time he used me. It's not the first time my parents asked me to fix something. But it is the first time he committed actual crimes in my name. Without my knowledge, without my permission. The defense attorney shifted. Mom's mouth fell open. Dad glared. I kept going. I didn't authorize anything he did. Not the credit line, not the purchases, not the gambling, not the forged signature. I didn't even know where he was. My throat tightened, but I forced the air through. My family is painting me as someone who abandoned them. But the truth is, they abandoned me a long time ago. They only call when they need something, and they always needed something. A tremor ran through me. I love my brother, I said quietly. But love doesn't mean sacrificing my entire life. It doesn't mean erasing myself so he can avoid consequences. Brody's eyes filled with anger, not sadness, not remorse, but fury. Mom gasped, covering her mouth. Dad shook his head as if I had committed betrayal. But I kept going. I am not responsible for his choices, I said. Not legally, not emotionally, not anymore. The judge nodded slowly. Thank you, Ms. Lane. Then Brody unmuted his microphone. His voice was raw with a mix of fear and desperation. Harper, please just tell them I didn't mean it. Tell them I had your permission. Please, I can fix. The judge cut him off. Mr. Lane, you may not address your sister directly. Brody's face twisted. She's lying. She knows she could help me. She just wants to punish me. She likes watching me fail. She always has. The deputy behind him placed a firm hand on his shoulder. Brody kept struggling. You owe me, Harper. You owe me. You can't do this. My stomach twisted into a painful knot. The judge raised his voice. Mr. Lane, enough. Brody sank back, breathing raggedly. My parents stared into their cameras like I had murdered something sacred. The judge cleared his throat, expression stern but sympathetic. Given the evidence, the state's charges will proceed. Bail is denied. The defendant will be transferred to county correctional. Mom let out a sound somewhere between a scream and a sob. Dad slammed his hand onto the table, disconnecting his camera for a moment. Brody went still, shock freezing him completely. The judge closed the session with a sharp rap of the gavel. Then the screen went dark. I sat there, breathing hard, hands trembling. Then something unexpected happened. The trembling stopped. Not slowly, completely, as if a weight I'd been carrying for decades had finally slipped off my shoulders. I closed my laptop and let myself feel everything: grief, guilt, sorrow, relief, clarity. And in that mixture was something else. A painful truth I had never dared to acknowledge. I wasn't their protector. I wasn't their savior. I wasn't their scapegoat. I was their escape plan. Until today. Today, I escaped. By evening, the news had reached every corner of my extended family. Some sent messages of disbelief. Others offered sympathy in quiet, hesitant texts. My favorite cousin wrote, "Proud of you. Boundaries aren't cruelty." My aunt wrote, "You did the right thing. I'm here if you need anything." I read those messages with tears in my eyes, not because of what they said, but because of what they meant. For the first time in my entire life, someone saw me, really saw me. When I finally went to bed, sleep came easier than I expected. No nightmares, no guilt, no imaginary screams, just silence. A kind I'd never known before. A kind I didn't realize I deserved. But now that I had it, I would never let it go. I didn't realize how quiet my life had become until a week passed without a single call from my parents. No texts, no voicemails, no desperate messages about debt, no guilt-laced demands, no middle-of-the-night catastrophes waiting for me to fix. My phone, once a constant siren, now rested silently on my counter, like it too was learning to breathe again. The first few days after the hearing felt strange, almost hollow. I kept bracing for impact, expecting another explosion, another ambush online, another wave of public shame designed to drag me back into their chaos. But nothing came. Not from them, anyway. The online storm quieted. The toxic comments slowed to a drizzle. HR confirmed that corporate communications had successfully issued takedown notices for posts containing my workplace, and my boss reassured me that everything was handled. A weight lifted from my shoulders, one I hadn't even known was crushing me until it was gone. Still, the sudden silence felt foreign. The absence of crisis felt like stepping into a new country where the language was unfamiliar, but the air was finally breathable. One afternoon, as rain tapped gently on the window, I sat on my couch with a cup of tea and opened my laptop, not out of fear but curiosity. I typed my name into the search bar. Nothing new appeared. My family's narrative had faded, replaced by the next viral tragedy, the next scandal, the next stranger-shaped disaster. As quickly as the mob had arrived, it had vanished. Just pixels dissolving into the void. I exhaled, then I made a decision. I opened a new tab and pulled up the Victim Services portal. The top of the page displayed an update: defendant transferred to rehabilitation facility for mandated 90-day program. Below that, victim visitation not required, communication not recommended. I stared at the screen for a long time. Not recommended. That phrase summed up my entire life. Communication with my family wasn't recommended. Sacrificing myself wasn't recommended. Losing my identity, my peace, my sanity for them wasn't recommended. And for the first time, I finally believed it. I closed the laptop, stood and walked to the balcony. The sky was overcast, soft gray clouds blanketing the horizon, but the air smelled fresh, clean, like the world had been washed and left to dry. Below, runners jogged along the river trail. A couple pushed a stroller, a dog barked at nothing. Life, ordinary and unbroken, continued around me, and I felt something in my chest loosen the lingering tension of years spent waiting for the next crisis. I wasn't waiting anymore. A few days later, a letter arrived, postmarked from Phoenix. My stomach tensed when I saw my mother's handwriting looping, and familiar, the same handwriting that signed birthday cards and grocery lists. But the envelope wasn't heavy. It wasn't thick with demands or accusations. Inside was a single sheet of paper. Just one sentence. When you're ready to talk, we'll listen. No apology, no accountability, no acknowledgement of the damage done. But also, no threats. No screaming. No manipulation. I folded the letter and placed it inside a drawer, not to treasure, not to keep close, but because throwing it away felt like giving it more weight than it deserved. The same day, Aunt Melanie called. "I heard they reached out," she said gently. I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. "They did. How do you feel I thought about it? Really thought about it? I feel nothing, I said finally. Not anger, not hope, just space. That's good, she said. Space is necessary. Sometimes space is the only way people learn. I let her words settle. Harper, she continued softly. You don't owe anyone reconciliation, not even family. Healing doesn't require returning to the place that hurt you. My breath trembled. I know, but if you ever decide to talk to them again, she said it should be because you want to, not because they demand it. I felt a strange warmth in my chest. Validation, permission, truth. Thank you, I whispered. The next few weeks unfolded quietly. I returned to the office. My coworkers greeted me with warmth, not pity. My boss pulled me aside and said, "We're in your corner." HR checked in once more, ensuring everything was resolved, and then life slowly, gently began to feel like mine again. I bought new plants for the apartment, rearranged the furniture, started taking longer walks after work. I even signed up for a ceramics class, something I'd always wanted to do but never made time for because someone else's emergency always came first. One evening I found myself sitting on my balcony with a fresh block of clay and a cheap set of tools. My hands moved awkwardly at first, then more confidently shaping something imperfect but real. Like me. Healing didn't look like forgiveness. Healing looked like boundaries, like breathing, like choosing myself without guilt. A week later, I got another update from Victim Services, case closed, rehabilitation underway. Restitution process initiated. That word restitution felt surreal. The system was doing what my family never could, holding someone accountable. I sat with that feeling for a long time, letting it wash through me. And then one evening, as sunlight dipped gold behind the Portland hills, I realized something I had survived. Not just the scandal, not just the identity theft, not just the digital mob. I had survived my family. And in their absence, I discovered someone I hadn't known for years myself. The Harper who laughed freely, the Harper who slept through the night, the Harper who made coffee slowly and savored it, the Harper who could go days without her heart racing over someone else's crisis, the Harper who didn't exist solely to keep others afloat. I didn't know what the future held. Maybe my parents would reach out again. Maybe Brody would eventually try to apologize. Maybe Cassidy would vanish into the digital mist she loved so much. Or maybe nothing would change. But I had changed. And that was enough. That was everything. As I finished the mug of tea in my hands, watching dusk settle over the river, I understood the truth I had run from for so long. Choosing myself wasn't betrayal. It was rebirth. And if you've ever had to walk away from the people who were supposed to love you, if you've ever had to choose yourself, after a lifetime of choosing others, I hope my story reminds you of something vital. You are allowed to save your own life first. And if this story resonated with you in any way, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Drop a comment, share your experience, or let me know where you're watching from. Your voice matters here. If you want more stories like this about strength, boundaries, forgiveness, and the quiet victories we rarely talk about, make sure to like, subscribe, and stay with this channel. There are more journeys ahead, and I'd be honored to have you on each one. Because healing doesn't happen alone. And neither does storytelling.